Hello, my name is Alan Linato, and I'm currently a bootcamp instructor and a ServiceNow practice lead for new apprenticeship. And I'm recording this video about on how to do GlideAjax in ServiceNow. GlideAjax is one of the oldest, like a dinosaur age concept in ServiceNow, on how to fetch data from server to client side. And I'll try to make this video as direct as possible. And what I'm going to show you is how to do that here. Pretty much, pretty simple, like simply how to do that. And I'm doing this because it's one of the most asked questions for me by by my students that I taught on ServiceNow bootcamps, and even work colleagues. Actually, even work colleagues. In previous companies, that's is one of the most asked questions for me. So I just decided that I recorded this video, and in the future, if someone asks me, "Oh, how would you do, Alan? Can you teach me how to do GlideAjax?" I'll just okay, here's a video, right? So and here's how you do it. In this example, you see here an incident record here in the incident form, and how we do that. What we intend to do is create. As soon as the incident form loads, it will display the caller's email address. So without scripting, as an end user, how you do that is just click the I icon there, and it shows you the information about the user. And here's the user's email, Alan's email. But then what we were going to do is display the email address of whoever the caller is in here in an incident. Display that email address in the incident form as a message, as a message at the top. So how we start is, of course, there are two things we will need in this case. The first one is a client script, and the second one is script include. So the client script would be the one responsible, doing the GlideAjax, right? This is where we do the GlideAjax. And then the script include would be the one is where we will return data from the server. And so as soon as the client script would initiate a GlideAjax call to the server, and the server through a script include will return the data, and then the return data will then be processed back to the GlideAjax. So how we start is just duplicate this tab and say, and I've got a habit of doing that. So in a form banner, just right click there and go to configure client scripts, because of course this first step, right? We'll create a client script. Okay, so we'll name that client script like onload GlideAjax demo. And the type is onload. As soon as I select the type, it gives you a boilerplate script to start. A boilerplate script start writing your own script, and then it's clear. It's empty. The function contents, and that's where we start. Doing GlideAjax, and of course we need sanity check. So I'll just use gglideform dot add info message. That's where I say that this is working. Right, so I always do that before I start. Before you do hardcore or deep dive scripting, I always do this kind of thing. I'd probably recommend that approach, especially if you're very new in ServiceNow scripting. So I'll refresh the form to see if my script is working. As soon as the form gets loaded, that message should appear at the top of the form, right? So there's a working, so that's great. Next thing we'll do is start calling GlideAjax. So we'll initiate a variable called GA, and say new GlideAjax. And as soon as I try to instantiate that GlideAjax, it asks me for a script include argument, the name of the script include. So that means before I proceed there, I need to go back to the server configuration, and that's where the second step comes in. Like we need to create the script include. How we do that? Just go to Application Navigator and search for script includes, and under the system definition, that's where you get to see the list of script includes, and create new from there. And we'll name it GlideAjax demo, and accessible from this is just me. I always default it to all application scopes, and it needs to be a client callable script, because otherwise it cannot be called or invoked from GlideAjax, from the client script. This is a very important piece of information, so don't forget to do that. As soon as you check this, you'll see that the script has been changed, right? It now extends abstract Ajax processor. So these are just object-oriented programming technicalities. So you can research more about OOP or object-oriented programming. Then here I'll add, I'll see that in here, it has a property called type by default. So I'll just add another property with comma and add new lines and say, get caller email, and that property should be a function. Now, like I said, this would always be the basic thing that you need to do. Just create a client script include, return any value there, even if it's stupid value. I'll just put in here. This is from the server, right? Or you can say server says hi. Right, so I'll just save this script include, and I go back to my client script because I have this is looking good now. And what we do next is go back here and provide the script include name. But there are a lot of people, lots of them, they use the name. But for me, if you want to be scope safe, regardless from which scope you're writing this, I use API names. So I'll just copy the API name and just put it in there. And don't forget to pass it as a string, right? And in the next line, that's where we start saying, okay, I'd like, so ga.addParam. So that means I like to say that, okay, hey, GlideAjax demo, I'd like to call you through this specific method or function or property, right? And this is called getCallerEmail. So how do we get to call this specific function? So I'll just copy this property, this getCallerEmail property, and pass it as a parameter here. But then for you to do that, you need to say this param name, and the value is getCallerEmail. So this says that I'm calling this script include, and this is specific function or property from that script include, right? And you do that by specifying it as a parameter called sysparam name. So don't forget that it has no a between r and m, right? It's kind of like param, but silent a. The second a is silent. So that's it. Now I'm ready to call it by adding another line there and say ga.getXML answer. Other people uses getXML, but I'm more fond of getXML answer because it already provides me the answer, the direct return value of the script include, which is the string, right? This is what we needed. So the XML answer needs a callback function. So I'll just say here function. I'll pass a function there, and that function needs to receive the response from the server. So we need to add a parameter called answer parameter. But really, you can always name this whatever name you'd like it to be. You can say that server response or server answer. Doesn't matter. But for me, I'll just use answer. And line 6, that's where I see that okay, this seems to be working. So how do I test that? Just add gform.addInfoMessage and say answer. That's it. Save that. And this is how you start learning GlideAjax. As soon as you're able to do this, what we've done so far, create a client script, unload client script, and then create a script include, and start building your function. Make sure that the function is, or the property name of the function property is aligned with how you like it, how you expect it to be named. So for me, I expect it to be getCallerEmail, and then for starters, just return any value there to test it. That, like I said, sanity check. So and the next thing is we go back to the client script and continue building our GlideAjax, and provide there the script include name and then the parameter, it's this name parameter. In the GlideAjax is where we pass the actual property name, that will property function that we want to call. And the next line, a set of lines, is to start getting the answer from the server by creating a callback function, and inside that callback function is where we get the answer from the server. So let's save that and move back to our incident form and refresh it. See that, right? Like as soon as the form gets loaded, the client script starts running, and then contact the server, and this is where it returns this answer, right? So this is exactly what came from the script include we wrote. So that means everything was working fine. So that's how I would suggest that you guys do it. Don't go there straight and start doing the scripting from end to end scripting, right? Don't do that yet, especially if you're very new to this. I mean, even myself, I've been doing this live for years, for more than 5 years already, and I still get mistakes. So it's important that you do a sanity check. Just do the basics, do the bare minimum, and get it working. As soon as the bare minimum is working, then only then you start proceeding, doing the actual. And the actual thing that we need to accomplish, we need to do here, is to get the email address, right? So the first thing we need to do is get the sys-id of the caller. In this case, that's the caller field. So how do we get the sys-id? Because the caller field here is a reference field, right? So, and the reference field, as we all know, stores the sys-id of the records being referenced. And we need to get the value of this field by using, let's create a new variable here called caller ID. And we will use gform.getValue, right? So we use that to get the value of that field, and the name of the field is, if you right click on the field table, it's this, right? The one that says show, and this enclosed in apostrophes is your field name. So we use caller ID, and that already is caller sys-id, sys-id of the reference record. Next is we pass it, right? So how do we pass that caller ID? Because what we need to do is pass that value to this property function, so that the script include through this method or property function can process that, just find that record. So in the function here, and this is my habit. Other people would say like, oh, you don't need to declare that as a parameter, but for me, I do that because I like to do small unit tests, quick unit tests, right? So I declare a function there like caller ID, right? And then here in line 7, I'd say caller ID is caller ID or this dot get parameter, and that's how I do it. I just add $sign and then caller ID, your actual parameter name. So what it does is that if you are unit testing it and you're calling it from the server without using GlideAjax, then this parameter should already have an argument or value, right? Otherwise, if you're calling it from GlideAjax, this is what we will get. Let me repeat that. If you're calling it from a service side, if you're calling this function from a service side script, then this will need to be populated, and therefore the caller ID variable is what we'll use. Otherwise, if it's being called from GlideAjax, this will be used, right? This .get parameter will have the corresponding value instead of the format. So that's how I do it. And at this point, we assume that the caller ID is already there. So we start doing glide records. GR is equal to new glide records, and we pass the record, the table name, and the old callers are coming from the user table. So we'll just do this user, and then in line 10, I'll just say that if gr.get, if we get that caller ID, if a user records with that sys-id exists, then this will be executed. And that's, we just say that return gr.email, and I'll enclose it in a string to explicitly convert it into a string type of value. Otherwise, return, I'd say, empty string, right? So that's it. I'll just return an empty string there, and that's how you just do it. So if you go back here, in line 8, instead of yeah, I think this is it. Oh, sorry, before that, we also need to pass a caller ID. Right, nearly forgot to do this. So the $caller ID is what we will reference to pass the caller ID to this script include. How we do that in the client script is here in line 6, we will add another parameter. So the first parameter is the name of the function, right? The name of the property function. So the next parameter is the $caller ID, and then the caller ID, which came from the field value, right? The field value is what we'll pass as a caller ID, right? So before I do this, well, I'll do a unit test. Or what I normally do is just open the background script window, and I'll just get any record that's in this case. I'll just get Alan Overman's record and get his ID from the address bar. That's the fastest way to get someone's ID or to get a record's ID. And here I'll just say user caller ID is this, and then I'll just call it from service side. Is it already? I think it's already. Oh, it's not yet saved, so I'll just save it. So the next thing we need to do is instantiate, just create a variable R. That's where we store the response of this the script include, and we instantiate that script include GlideAjax demo dot get caller email, and then we pass the caller ID, right? And then js.info R. So that's how we log the response of that property function. Then run the script. See that it's working, right? So that means it's working. That's how you unit test a script include quickly. So that means it's working. So therefore, we can safely go back to the client script and assume that this is also supposed to work. So just to summarize, we created a GlideAjax, instantiated GlideAjax, trying to call this script include. On the next line, we say that we intend to call this function, get caller email function from the script include. Right, and the next thing is to pass the parameter, which is caller ID, through the $caller ID parameter. And other people, they do this, right? They do that. I just don't know why they do that, really. But I explored it, and it seems to be you don't need to do that. That long, silly name, sysparam caller ID. I just added $sign to make sure it doesn't conflict with anything system related in ServiceNow built-in API. So I have that, and then on line 8, that's where we start executing the GlideAjax call, and we expect an answer, and then the answer goes to the answer parameter, and then we'll show it in the form, right? So I'll just save it and refresh this form. So at this point, as soon as the incident form refreshed, the caller's email address should be there, just like that, right? It's very easy. So then in here you can start appending some stuff there, right? And say that caller's email address. Oh no, I think we can just add some basic HTML. And wrap it around the bold tag, so that it becomes a bolded value. So I'll save it, refresh this form again. That's it, right? Caller email address is ao@example.com. If you want, you can also pass JSON. Right, if you know JSON, we can also return objects. And now this is much advanced, not much advanced, but quite an advanced part. So you can go ahead and stop watching this video. But if you want to go there, I'm going to show you how to return an object. So how you do that is, I'll just say, what if I want to return not just the email, right? So at this point, we're returning a complex value. You can say non-scalar value in JavaScript. So what if I want to return the email, first name and last name, right? So how would you do that? So in here, I'll just say an object like result, or you can say answer, right? Answer, and just put into here first name, and it's empty, right? It's empty. First name, last name, and then email. These are all null answers. And then here in line 16, instead of returning the email value right away, we'll populate that object and say that answer.email is equal to string gr.email, and answer.firstname is equal to string gr.firstname. Am I right? So how would we verify that we're actually using the correct field name? So we just go to the callers record and just right click on field names. First name is first underscore name. Last name is last underscore name. That's it. I think we're doing it correctly. So the next line is answer dot last name, and I think that's it. Right? I think that's it. Now we will return that object as JSON. So how you do that is return JSON.stringify answer. Now you save it, and now and then we'll go back to client script. So instead of just retrieving it as an answer, if we actually log the answer now, it looks different at this point. It's now a JSON string. So if we refresh this, it's not just an email address anymore. Actually, if we rerun our background script, this looks like this now, right? So this is not just an email address, but at least we can pass our complex values. Now, if we go here, see that, right? It's not the scalar value anymore. It's now an object. It's actually JSON, an object string, right? Object string is for me, right? I call it JSON. So how do we get these values? First name, last name, and email. So of course we're going to need to parse it. So we will parse it. By parsing it means we will convert it back to object. So for me, I don't want to add more variables. I'll just say answer is equal to JSON.parse answer. So that's it. Just just converting itself, right, from JSON to object. Now, normally, like strictly speaking, you need to wrap it inside try-catch statements, right? That's how you strictly do that, really. Split it in try-catch, and inside the catch part is where you get how you handle the error, in case you got invalid response. But for now, for the sake of simplicity, I'll just do it this way. So now that I pass answer variable, answer parameter, at this point it should now be an object. So now I can start saying that gform.addInfoMessage and say email is answer.email. You know what? What I'm thinking of is I'll just do gform.addInfoMessage and say let's do an array and then dot join it with comma, right? Comma space, really. And then for each array, we just say that first name, then concatenate answer dot first name. Last name, concatenate it with last name, and then email, concatenate with email property. I think that's it. Add semicolon, and you should be good to go. So if I refresh this incident form, see that, right? First name is Alan, last name is Overman, and you can do some other stuff there, right? You can start manipulating this, really, the values, and say that answer dot the caller is and just concatenate first name and add some space and say last name, and his email address, let's put it on a new line, and email address is answer.email. That's it. Just save it. This warning is just about extra spaces. Now if I refresh this incident form, see that, right? So now it says the caller is Alan Overman and his email address is ao@example.com. So that's how you do GlideAjax end-to-end. So at this point, so what we just did is the basics, and then the and then how we return a simple value from script include, and how we return complex value or object value um, from the script includes, and we do some parsing or conversions. So that's just it. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, or you can just comment in this video if I'm posted it in YouTube or LinkedIn. You just feel free to reach out. All right. You have a good day.